I'm saying work-life balance, and I think that it's not necessarily balance that we're trying to achieve. We're just trying to bring some consistency into whether it's how you perform at work or the effort that you're putting in there, the effort that you're putting in at home or in your own health and fitness. There is going to be at times where you will need to prioritize something over the other, and that's okay. That's absolutely fine. It's where we're doing that all of the time that we then start to neglect the things that are important, and then they just get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And then eventually the one thing that's keeping us going, something might happen there.
Someone said to me years ago, they're like, it's not a 30-day challenge. It's not an 8-week challenge. Every year we're on a 365-day challenge, right? Like the challenge has got to last our life, right? Like we want to be the best we can be, the healthiest we can be, the fittest we can be for as long as we live, right? So it's not about these short-term challenges. It's really about committing and focusing on being the best that you can be each day. And if one day you don't feel it, that's okay. You just do it the next day, and you just over time, the habit comes in.
That's right. And I think, people know when they're starting to form habits that aren't serving them in the way because you don't feel good. But we still choose those things because it's easier to do that than it is to maybe shake things up and change. So there has to be a level of discomfort at some point. It doesn't matter if you're starting out a new a new exercise or training plan or a new job, right? So jobs, everyone needs to work for a living, right? We all need money to put food on the table. So I'll use this in a context of work. When we need to go to find a new job, right? We submit our resumes, we put on our best attire, we show up in the best version of ourselves so that we can compete for the job that we want because it's the right salary, the right whatever organization, and we go and give that job 110%. Right now, think about the discomfort of starting a new job. It might have been a while for yourself, but anyone listening, think about the last time you started a new role. It was uncomfortable, but you did it because the motivation of income was there. So if you think about putting in place changes to better your mind, your body, your health, there has to be an element of discomfort because if there's not, you're probably not changing enough to make you feel better. We just don't prioritize those things enough. And and maybe that's because we've got too many demands on our time or we try to do too much. We try to show up for too many people. But if you want to keep doing all of those things, at some point, you're going to need to get really real with yourself. You're going to need to ask yourself some tough questions. Am I showing up as the person that I am most proud of? I love using this one. Am I role modeling the behaviors I want my kids to role model? If I was to go back and tell my younger self, the person that they're about to become, is that a proud moment for you? And if that creates a little bit of discomfort and you're like, oh, maybe not, that's probably a little sign, something in your mind that's going, okay, I need to change something. The next provocation I have for that is don't try and change everything at once because it's too much too soon. You don't need to go and change and start exercising 5 days a week and start a new nutrition plan because you're shaking things up too much. Our bodies and our minds don't love change. Doesn't matter how often we tell ourselves to have a growth mindset and approach this as a learning opportunity. We are creatures of habit. And if you can introduce changes in like small increments and in iterations, then that is going to be far more sustainable than trying to do a big bang and do everything at once. Because when you do have one day of a speed wobble, you go, I'll throw it out the window and I'll start again next week, right? And it's okay to have speed wobbles. It's also okay to not maybe hit all of the things that you said that you wanted to, but if you've hit more of the things on your, new me list, I'm going to drink more water today. Okay, so if you're drinking 500 ml of water and your goal is to get to 2 liters and you only had 1 liter, that's still an improvement on the 500 that you were having before. So don't see that as I wasn't good enough. I didn't get to 2 liters today. Look at the fact that you improved on what you did the day before. And that's what's going to get you the long-term result. And as for things like 30-day challenges, 12-week challenges, they are a great little motivator. I still do those because it feels good to work towards something. But just think about what are you learning in that process that you can then continue and sustain over the long run.
Yeah. That's put very, very well. Can I ask Danielle, through, starting in fitness, going into corporate, and now really focused on, coaching and helping other people lift their wellness, well-being, their potential and performance.
Yeah.
I'd really like to get your insights on going through burnout and that overwhelm. What was it for you?
Yes. So there's I think a few things. Firstly, I neglected the things that were important to me, and that was movement. So I have a saying: if you need to move your mood, move your body. And I wasn't doing that anywhere near enough. So that was actually what got me back into the fitness world. So I went, as I said before, I was a personal trainer and I worked in fitness, and then I moved into corporate where I worked almost 10 years in the financial services industry, and of the last four in a people leader role. And when you've got a team and a remit. And different functions that you're responsible for, there is an element of pressure that comes with that, which I really thrived on. I really loved the dynamic, fast paced movement of that, but at times really neglected to see the impact and the toll that that was having on myself, my mindset, my body. I would go to work earlier, I'd stay back late. And those were the times that I'd carve out for myself to move. And so I stopped doing those things. And then over time, I started to feel not so confident. I started to feel really lethargic. I had really poor sleep quality. Um, and I thought, wow, I've really neglected this element of my life that is actually really important and intrinsically who I am. So I joined the gym when it opened, and then just through connections that I had established in my former fitness days, got back into group fitness instructing. And I remember someone saying to me, "You already work a 45-hour week. How on earth are you going to fit in instructing?" At that time, it was a couple of hours a week. And I thought, well, I'm going to choose my heart because I don't have to be at my job at 5:30 in the morning. I'm choosing to. I don't know why. No one remembers. No one is going to remember me for the report that I wrote or the really pretty slide deck that I put together. I'm sure someone somewhere went, yeah, that was a really cool graphic, but that's not what people are going to remember me for. My son's going to remember me for the energy that I had, all the time that I spent with him versus being slumped on the couch scrolling on my phone because I was too tired to do anything else. So I chose my heart and I chose to create a schedule that allowed me to go and instruct in the gym. And then what was really, I guess, the tipping point for me realizing that I was not serving myself in the best way was that after doing that for about a couple of months, I noticed that my productivity at work was improving. I was like, oh my God, I've known this all along. I knew that I needed to look after me to be able to perform better over here. And yes, my time, it's finite. We don't have endless hours in the day, but I chose to show up in the morning for myself versus for my job. And then it made the productivity in my job better anyway. So it's not about necessarily the amount of time that I was spending there. It was the quality of the work I was producing, and I was able to produce a better quality and caliber of work because I was looking after my mind and my body in the mornings. And that's probably a little bit of that. That was my wake up moment. That was one thing. I think the other thing as well is that your culture and the systems and the environment that you are in play a huge part in the way that you show up. So if you're in an environment where people are really empowering you, you're working with like-minded people, you're having
Hmm.
interactions that fill your cup rather than take from it all the time, that plays a big part in that burnout phase. And so, if you're going through, like I said before, everyone needs a job. And often we find ourselves in jobs that we stay in for the long term because we're too scared to try something new, put ourselves out there for something different, maybe look for that promotion and develop our skills or capabilities to be able to jump to the next thing. It's uncomfortable, right? Let's just stay where we are and complain about it instead. Because that feels easier than going and putting myself out there to do something different. But that was a game changer for me as well. So I looked at my work and I looked at the people that I was working with and I thought, okay, I could learn a thing or two from the people that I work with that's going to help me perform better, but also is going to better what the team objectives are. So I used that culture and that environment to propel me in my career. And I sought those people out outside of my immediate team, outside of the people that I worked with most throughout the day. I went and spoke to senior executives. I went and had coffee catch ups with people who were in completely different business units and said,
Hmm.
hey, talk to me about your world and talk to me about what happens when things are on fire. Like, what happens here? Because if you can approach things with a mindset of you have more to learn from these people that you are around you, but not in your immediate circle, you open yourself up to trying new things and doing things differently rather than being stuck in the same rat wheel, right? Doing the same things over and over, expecting a different result. That's insanity, right?
Hmm. Yeah, that's exactly right. So obviously going through that burnout, and all the associated kind of signs and symptoms through that, it really kind of led you to now founding Bright Edge.
Yes, yeah. So as I said, like we perform to the level of our preparation, not just the intent. And for me, I always intended for myself to be a great employee, to be a great wife, great mom. But I wasn't necessarily setting myself up for success. And it's work seems to be the thing that we will focus on most because we hold that to the highest priority because it gives us money, right? And that's really important right now with cost of living and we prioritize that you can apply these principles in any context of your life, right? Um, and so, what I do with my clients is I really try and help, number one, train the brain like a muscle to think about the world a little differently, to help reframe situations that take you from being stuck as a victim in your own life to really taking control and leading your life with intent and self leadership. That is so important. I've had the absolute privilege of working with a lot of leaders in my time in a corporate context, working on large scale leader capability programs. And the thing that I see people neglect the most as a leader is themselves. And we need to start there. And if you can master your mindset, then you can go on to influence others and then you can go on to lead enterprise. And it's the starting with self stuff that matters most, I think, and has the most impact in the future state of you. And so I really help people understand that where they are in life is a byproduct of all of the systems and their mindset, their ways of thinking. But the good news is you can interrupt that and change it because our brains are really dynamic. And I'm in no way a neuroscientist or enough informed to go through the scientifics of all of that. But what I do know is that you can rewire your brain, you can learn new skills, you can build your capability. And you do this with small, consistent effort. You can start today, right? Next time you go grocery shopping and you hear a kid screaming in the aisle, the first thing we do is like, oof, that kid, like that's a lot. Whatever's going on there is just like the kid's either acting out, parent doesn't care. You tell yourself all of these stories, right? I challenge you to reframe and go, well, maybe that child is neurodivergent and they're having an episode and this is what they need to do. Maybe that parent just got some really awful news and they don't have it in them to deal with the emotional needs of their child right now because they in themselves are having an inner crisis. There is so much more to the story that we see in front of us. And it's the same of ourselves. So don't tell yourself, "Oh, I'm so overweight," or "I'm so lazy," and "Oh, I didn't get up off the couch today and do anything good for my body." That might all be true, but maybe it's a case of I'm going to set an alarm 15 minutes earlier tomorrow so I can walk around the block, and that's something good I'm going to do for me. I'm going to reframe that way of thinking about myself because the stories we tell ourselves are so powerful. And that's what I try to help my clients understand is that what is the story you are telling yourself about you, your partner, your work? What is it? And can you flip the script? Imagine
Mm.
that you are not you. Imagine you are someone on the outside looking in. Tell me what's going on now. Without knowing all the intimate details, what does that person see? Because maybe that's going to offer you a perspective shift that you need to kick your backside into gear to do something a little bit different, or maybe just go a little easier on yourself as you start to develop a new habit. So, very much just around reframing your thinking and understanding that of the 50, 60,000 thoughts that we have a day, of which we are not aware, could you imagine how exhausting that would be? Our brains are wired to see danger and stress, and we haven't really, we like to think we've evolved, but we haven't, right? We are still built in the times where we're running from tigers and needing to fight for our life, and our
Yes.
brain, our amygdala, is looking for stress and danger, and we will very easily fall into a stress response or a victim mentality and go, oh my god, I need to fight or run, fight, flight, freeze. We are always putting ourselves in situations like that, but you can try to interrupt that thinking by going, right, let's just pause. Let's have a look at what's going on. How can I choose to respond differently to maybe my knee jerk reaction, which you've built up over a lifetime of doing the same thing over and over and over again? And then how could that response change the outcome, right? How could that be a little bit different if I choose to respond a different way? And it
Mm.
takes practice. You can't expect to show up when the stakes are high and just do that. You need to practice in the low stake moments when it doesn't matter. Just like an athlete wouldn't take to the field to play, say, a 90-minute football game without having practiced 3, 4 nights of training before that game, right? It's the same as our brains and the way that we look at the world, the way that we perceive the things that are going on around us. You need to practice adopting a different perspective, even if it feels uncomfortable. You don't have to agree with it. You just have to go, oh, yeah, that could be true. Oh, yeah, that could be true. And over time, you'll start to develop more empathy, not just for yourself, others as well. You'll develop perspective and you'll be able to talk yourself into a different way of thinking before things feel so overwhelming that you can't handle the stress or the response that normally comes from that.
Mm.
Right, a little bit
And I know
long-winded.
no, that's all right. And I know that you're very passionate about it, right? Like
Clearly.
I love the conversations we have about it. But it's interesting. I know, we've been talking about it, and you talk about your fitness and your health and your well-being. You talk about the corporate, and you've got that knowledge and experience. But it's really about helping people, not just be sustainable in their health and fitness, but also being sustainable in their, career. But overall, it's being sustainable holistically, right? In all facets of their life, mum, parent, friend, sibling, all these different things, making sure that you can be the best version of you and that it's sustainable,
Yeah.
and that you're not just focusing on one thing. And obviously at different times we will focus on, okay, so if you're focusing on more of your health and fitness for a 30-day, challenge at the gym, there's probably going to be a couple of things that are probably going to be sacrificed in that 30 days, right? And it does, like I talk about the wheel of life in life coaching, right? And you've got finance, relationship, friends,
Mm.
fun, all these things. And I say there's never a time when that is a perfect wheel, right? It just isn't, because things happen from time to time. Life has a cycle. But as long as you're aware of it and that you can kind of be going, how do I make, I've got a 5 out of 10 in finance. How could I move that to a 6 out of 10? How could I move in fun? How could I go from a 4 out of 10 to a 5 out of 10? How can I make these incremental, just slight movements forward, and how will that affect my life long term?
Yeah, definitely. And that's just it. There's saying work-life balance. And I think that, it's not necessarily balance that we're trying to achieve. We're just trying to bring some consistency into, whether it's how you perform at work or the effort that you're putting in there, the effort that you're putting in at home or in your own health and fitness. There is going to be at times where you will need to prioritize something over the other. And that's okay. Right, that's absolutely fine. It's where we're doing that all of the time that we then start to neglect the things that are important, and then they just get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And then eventually the one thing that's keeping us going, something might happen there. That great example of this. My job for so long was my beacon on the hill. It was the thing that I was excellent at. And I would show up at work and I'd love the person that I was there. I loved the people that I worked with. I enjoyed the culture and I was so enthusiastic and motivated in that job. I loved everything that we were doing. We went through a really large scale transformation and things felt chaotic for a little while. The systems that we had in place were pulled apart because we needed to forge the path for new ones. And that work bubble that I went to and felt so great in very quickly knocked me and my confidence went through the floor. I was like, I can't do this. How have I gone from being really great to being knocked flat on my ass and not knowing what to do in this situation? And what then happened was that I realized that the rest of my life was also in this kind of state where I felt like I was not present or intentionally living in any of the areas of my life, intentionally living, period. And so when you do notice that you are prioritizing a portion of your life over at the detriment of others, that's when you need to go, okay, well, how do I achieve a little bit more of a equal tension in the way that I'm prioritizing things? So as an example, no phones at the dinner table, right? We don't scroll, we don't work, we don't check emails, we don't respond to the notifications. That is a tech-free zone. So that allows me to prioritize my family for that 30 minutes that we're sitting at the table. right? And it's small stuff like that. Like I said, it's not sexy stuff. Like I really wish that it was there's a secret, but it's really just um, putting in place those small things that allow you to do whatever it is you want to focus on better at that for that, period of time.
Yep. Having boundaries and non-negotiables.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And exercise for me is a non-negotiable. I say my husband knows that, my son knows that, and I think that's important. Parents have this parent guilt is something I could talk about for a really long time. Having been through it, having neglecting myself postpartum, there's a lot that that's a whole other conversation. It is not selfish to prioritize you. It is not
Mm.
selfish to take 60 minutes out of your day to go for a walk, 30 minutes out of your day to stretch or lift some weights. It is not selfish to do those things. And parents tell themselves this story that it is because I need to devote 100% of my time to this human that I've created. It's not true. And the behavior that you're role modeling is that you're going to always be there for them. Where does their resilience come from? Where does their critical thinking come from? Where does their skill and capability come from to be able to walk through life if you're always there? You know, you asked me before, how do I help Liam with this stuff? I'm raising him to be independent, and I'm raising him to be able to look at situations and have his first thought not be, "Oh, mum, answer this for me." It's, "I'm gonna try and work this out myself, and then when I can't, I'll ask for help." And if we can, do those things for our kids, if we can do those things for ourselves, our children, our friends, the people around us see that it's actually okay to look after ourselves rather than looking after everybody else first. And on that note, I'll also say that going grocery shopping is not timeout, parents. That is not doing something for you. You need to shop to put food on the table. That is not or should not be counted as doing something for yourself, right? I hear that all the time. Oh, I got out and I went to do my grocery shopping. No, no, that's not adulty or adulting, right? Like we have to do that, and that is not time out. You might enjoy maybe the peace and
Mm.
quiet when you're doing that, and it feels good, but go and get a massage, go and book a coffee, catch up with someone, go and read a book in the library for 60 minutes. That is time out for you, not doing your grocery shopping.
Yeah. And I think talking about that parent guilt, talking about the pressures of life, talking about, how we're kind of just on this conveyor belt of life, conveyor belt of career,
Mm.
conveyor belt of health and fitness. But obviously, at the end of this year, you're leading Overland Trek.
Yes, yes. I'm channeling my hiking enthusiasm to go on a multi-day trek in Tassie. Yes, I'm very excited and maybe even a little bit nervous about that. That's going to push me out of my comfort zone, fitness-wise, and I think mentally. I'm a bit of a princess in the piece. I'm not sure how I'm going to go sleeping on boardwalk, but I am super excited for the adventure.
You'll be fine. I'll give you some tips around some of the blow up mattresses that you
Yes,
can get that are
excellent.
pretty good.
I'll leave.
So having done it twice, obviously I know the benefits of it. But you know, talk to me about who you think should be attending.
Anybody who has a love of wanting to just be in the outdoors, connect with nature. We're talking 5 nights, 6 days of being in Tasmanian wilderness, right? Where you will disconnect because you can't charge your phone. You are going to connect with the humans around you. Nothing else is going to matter for that amount of time. It also requires a degree of preparation. So I think if you're somebody who likes to have the big goal and work towards something really big and shiny at the end as a bit of a reward, this is that opportunity. I think it's for anybody who is wanting to maybe just live a little differently for the next several months as you prepare to go on a trek like that. It's certainly not for people who are, you don't have to be fit to do it already. Do you know what I mean? Like there's time to prepare. And I think you're able to start that now, the mindset, the physical conditioning, the mental conditioning. And of course, if you are super fit, then yeah, you'll probably find carrying a, 20 kg pack a little bit easier than someone who hasn't done that before or they're in the beginning of their fitness journey. But yeah, I think it's honestly for anybody who is wanting to try something a little bit different. I think that people are probably a little bit like, "Whoa, it's a really long time to be hiking." We're talking at least 65 kilometers over a period of 6 days. That is definitely achievable if you can set up the systems now and start conditioning the body, the mind, to be able to do that. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a fantastic challenge. I think that the camaraderie will be super important. We'll get to see, um, you know, parts of the world that people don't ever get an opportunity to see, and you'll get some lifelong friends and memories from it. How cool!
Yeah.